afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane. Another episode of Things I'd Like to See. What is this thing I'd like to see in today's episode, or today's video? Well, bigger maps, basically. I mean, better maps overall, but a lot of it, I think, can sum down to basically bigger maps. I'm not talking, huge tracts of land, but, I mean, if you sort of compare, say, take a look at Addendum Checkpoint, a map that I like, I mean, that's a good, decent size. Also, more specifically, in that sense, it also feels big due to the fact it's not really deeply constrained. I mean, there's a lot that sort of affects movement. There's a lot of fences, other bits here. But overall, there's not a lot of what I'd call dead space. Not the Electronic Arts kind where you have to fight monsters. And then the third game turns out to be rather rubbish as game because they really had to try and make it more appealing to everybody rather than just sticking to its niche. But no, not that kind of dead space. I'm talking again the sort of space where basically you can't really do anything. I mean, talking bits like this again. You can't move through it, you can't jump through it, there's nothing really to do with it. I mean, that's basically dead space. For example, like this bit here, well, you can actually move through that one, but this here, that's rather well described as dead space. Again, where you can't really just do anything with it. I mean, sparsely used, it's good. Again, it can sort of create sort of gaps where you can sneak through and so on there. The problem is, several of the 1 versus 1 maps, and then some of them even used as 2 versus 2 maps, have a lot of it. Basically meaning the actual amount of terrain that's usable is actually considerably small. When you then also factor in a lot of the maps and they're really small, it really gets worse. I mean, in some maps, you can, for example, park in a little piece here and fire quite far into the map. They're covering a nice chunk of it, really make it difficult to fight, in particular when they can then fight from the safety of their own base. I find that is not frightfully good map design. It does, I think, lead to some rather boring maps and overall boring matches that way, when again it's just so small that what essentially World War II was a war of maneuver, you can't really maneuver on those maps. And again, when you then make them 2 versus 2s, it rather turns into the Somme, overdone very quickly, which again doesn't really lead to anything fun, interesting, or exciting to watch. And probably that could even sort of further apply to 3 versus 3s and 4 versus 4 maps. I mean, they do need some space. They do need some room to maneuver. That's not to say you can't have, urban maps. The problem is, when you have a map like Stalingrad, 2 versus 2, but very small, very narrow, little room for maneuver, very few paths to actually flank on, and then you have a lot of the houses. Again, if the new system was to be implemented there, that's one suggested in the previous video, maybe. But, currently, no. Again, there needs to be some kind of room we can sneak up in. Again, that's where I'm checkpoint. I've seen these further bits we can sort of further creep up. There's a lot of, overt paths, direct paths, less direct paths, sneaky paths, and so on. Then again, just all of this. Again, you can move through it, but at the same time, it provides cover from line of sight. And again, that's another thing where I think Addendum Checkpoint does something good. It doesn't directly block movement as such, not for example vehicles lay down the road, but what it does is it makes it harder for you to see again. So in that sense, it also plays into very well, also reason to have bigger maps. It also makes it harder for a player just to lock down one spot, and also just to keep track of everything easy. That forces him to be more careful and cover flanks more, and that also then opens up to more flanking, obviously. But it also has another effect with bigger maps. I mean, again, emplacements, they're not really popular, in part because, again, on a lot of the maps, they're basically, so effective due to the small size of the maps, because, again, they can cover a huge part. And then at least you have several points, for example, and again, that's also what causes problems, similar with the buildings, The smaller the map is, the more importance a building can have. I mean, take Langradiskaya, one building, and sort of the right-hand side can really just dominate the fight. Compared with here, I mean, sure, this one's going to be handy, but it's not really going to dictate everything. It can easily be avoided there. It's not going to be having a massive impact. Neither will this one, or kind of this one. Again, they have still impact, but it's not going to be, the end of the world as some buildings can have on much smaller maps. The whole end of the line kind of thing then just turns into a brutal war of attrition and just, again, rush for it. So by making maps, well, bigger, again, we can sort of lessen the impact of houses. They'll still be, of course, effective, but they won't be overwhelmingly effective. And similarly with emplacements, they're not just going to lock down the map there with one in the right spot, or say the same with the schwer panzered quarters. It fosters, more mobile tactics, and sort of more intelligent play rather than, again, just, popping down here and there. I mean, obviously a map like Island Checkpoints, for example, is completely perfect. There's, for example, the west side is rather easy to reach for both sides. For the eastern one here, which more favors the southern player, it's a lot harder to reach for the northern players. I mean, there's obviously room for improvement there, but you sort of compare this one with, say, again, maps like Langarskaya, Minsk Pocket, and so on there. It's a lot more fun. Again, it opens up to a lot more interesting play and a lot more mobile, swift, fluid play, again, compared to some of those other maps, because, again, they're just sort of much more easily just to lock down and turn into just a grind. Or a map like Samoski, which, again, the way it's sort of built in, I mean, one side's pretty much just one big fat choke point. It just sort of turns again to a massive grind because there's just so few paths to maneuver about on. So in that sense, again, more maps would again foster more paths and less choke points, or at least less decisive choke points. There's nothing wrong in choke points as long as there's ways around them as well. The problem is, again, when there's then all these small maps, there doesn't a lot of room for more paths, and then that means there's more effectiveness on the few choke points there are. So that's really something you want to avoid. I mean, you can have maps with a lot of crap there, a lot more specific design rather than just being huge with a few houses here and there and so on. I mean, take 1v1 map from Companies 1, Bow Lowlands. I mean, a lot of people hated it, but I kind of liked it because it was actually big. It was big. It wasn't so easy to lock down there, so it gave you some room to maneuver on. Again, that's the important part. You can have, larger maps with a lot of finicky things, but there does need to be room to maneuver on. There needs to be room where you can't sort of sneak up and flank behind. And again, I think it's also where some of the parts there, again, where, when Relic designs a map or some of those other chaps design a map there, they do tend to forget those. They do tend to just, focus on a few specific larger paths and then, making it look really neat, but it ends up not playing very neat because, well, it just tends to end up then in a meat grinder, which, isn't very exciting to look at in the longer run. And again, similarly, a lot of 2 versus 2 maps, of course, also fall into that trap to a certain extent, in particular when they then also play on Samoski. And again, that needs to stop, Relic. That needs to stop. No more 1 versus 1 maps repurposed into 2 versus 2 maps. I mean, if you have to do it the other way around. Even that, though, I wouldn't recommend, because, again, they should be, properly bigger. But, no more Samoskis as 2 versus 2 maps, please. But again, if that can happen, again, I think overall we've been having a lot more fun experiences and overall less maps just, ticked off. Because, again, it's a bit of a problem when they're just, just a series of choke points with nothing really else going on. Good maps, I think, again, the ones that do open up for maneuver for better flanking, but also for just sneaking about. And again, in that sense, Arnhem Checkpoint just has so many options here. I mean, this one's rarely utilized, but it's there. You can also sneak through here, there, over. I mean, really everywhere. It's not just something you just sort of plonk down an MG somewhere. I mean, then you sort of risk losing else of the map. So it does foster, more flexible play. And again, that's where things get interesting, in my opinion. So again, lastly, overall to conclusion, I just like to see bigger maps because, that's probably easy to say, but they're also a bit more open maps. But still, that's not to say I'm against, maps, that do try a bit more of an urban playstyle. But they probably need to have some suburbs and a bit of sort of open terrain around as well. There needs to be sort of ways to sort of go around as well. There needs to be, different options. There needs to be sort of different fields within the map, I suppose, or areas. Again, it shouldn't just be, a large series of enclosements or enclosures with choke points galore. Because, again, it doesn't really lead to anything exciting. So, again, if that were to happen, I think, future Companies 3 would do well, though of course it would be nice if there were to, update some of the maps to be slightly bigger. Say a Samoski where there's a bit more room as well, a few more paths, a few more options for sneaking in, also to perhaps attack the base again. Some maps do rather also leave few options for actually, sneak around to their main point and actually hitting the base, which, is also unfortunate. But overall, just, if possible, bigger maps. And again, if there were to hold some of the maps now in the current map pool to be bigger, I'd be happy. Samoski, Faymanville, Langarskaya, Angerville could probably also benefit a bit. Some of those maps, just make them a bit bigger, a bit more roomy, and a bit more sort of maneuverable. So there you go. Thank you all for joining in. Hopefully this has been an interesting video. Hopefully you've agreed with what I've said. Again, bigger maps. If you didn't, subscribe, like, share it, talk about it here, forums, to Relic, so on there. And, let me know in the comment section again if you also agree that's nice to see. And, of course, give some feedback and so on there. Of course, if you have some further suggestions on also, how to make better maps, put them in. This is Imperial Dane signing off and hope to see you all another time for another exciting episode, another exciting video. Cheers!